Hi, and welcome to another episode of Our Daily Magic, where we talk about the magic that we are being and wish to see in the world. And we have a very special guest today, which we will get introduced to in just a moment.
And of course, and first off, hello, everyone. And Kai, drop the intro. Welcome back. And want to give, of course, the formal introduction that we do before we get right into things. And I'm going to read just a quick description about our guest today. So Rajiv Mudamba is a dynamic entrepreneur, executive business strategist, coach, and advisor. He is also an accomplished author, speaker, and thought leader. Above all, Rajiv is a die-hard optimist with a can-do attitude. Love that. Throughout his professional life, Rajiv has built profitable, value-based business, nurtured strategic partnerships, and built lifelong friendships. He has worked with organizations and individuals to remedy challenges and achieve results. Rajiv has achieved stellar results in international business, startups, new business line, and now is focused on helping you succeed in your profession and or business to get the most out of your life. Rajiv has an award-winning popular podcast, Plan B Success, where he shares his insightful and thought-provoking personal and business growth strategies and interviews inspiring entrepreneurs and professionals. He also speaks and writes frequently on the topics of personal and professional growth, self-empowerment, life and career coaching, among others. He has recently launched his book, My Inspirations, quote that shaped myself improvement journey. It's available on Amazon, and Rajiv has delivered several keynotes, topical speeches, and national and international conferences. He has made it his mission to extract from his experience and share value to mentor individuals, current and future entrepreneurs and executives, startups, scale-ups, and large corporations. Accolades for him include World Affairs Council Kentucky and Southern Indiana's 2010 Global Visionary Award, Business First of Louisville 40 Under 40 Award, Telehealth and Medicine Today's 2016 Publisher Award, and Indian Achiever Forum 2017 Indian Achiever Award for Health and Education. Wow.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rajiv Mudamba.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Yep, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you as a guest on our show. And I know I did the formal introduction, but we definitely want to get more into it to learn more about yourself and also more about your journey that got you to where you are right now. And from this description, you are definitely thriving in so many different ways. So definitely would love to hear the story for our audiences to help them to get into the essence of who you are and exactly who your mission is. So Feel free to
Absolutely.
start wherever you want to.
Awesome. So, I think that was a pretty long introduction, but
Yeah.
if I were to tell my story in my own words, right? My very first job was when I was a teenager. I was teaching, basically tutoring a couple of kindergarten kids for $3 a month. That's where I started.
Wow.
And then then I'm from India, and India so as a society is very competitive and very education focused. It's all about academics. And I grew up in the same environment. I ended up taking an MBA in India, and this was in the mid 90s when India was opening up to the world. It was a pretty closed kind of a country, and suddenly it was interested in doing trade with companies and allowing multinationals to come in and all that. And at that point in time, there was a direct marketing company that came in, a Canadian company, and they had this very cool way of selling to people and selling door to door and 2-minute pitches. In 2 minutes, you try your best and either make a sale or move to the next. And they had something else called the law of averages, which is you go and knock 300 doors a day, you're bound to get 30 yeses. So that was the principle behind it, which kind of intrigued me. And while all my friends and counterparts in MBA were looking at that next cushy job that they could find, I decided to pick up a bag and go door to door. And I did that for about a year and a half. I ended up building a team. I started a franchisee office with the company. I ran it for a year, at which point the company decided it was better for them to source their products within India. And it clicked at that time for me too. I'm like, if you can do it, I can do it too. So I parted ways. I I established my own company. I did my own sourcing, and I grew it from pretty much scratch to about 300 employees, 12 locations in about a year. I ended up selling that business, and this was the time when technology was taking off in India. Everybody was talking about programming languages and all that, and I was one of those guys who had graduated out of college before technology really hit its peak. So it was important for me to go back and learn technology. So I did my own thing, went and tried learning a couple of programming languages. Wasn't very good at it. It wasn't my sweet spot. And I'm like, I don't really enjoy this. But yet, if you want to survive in the future world, you got to understand technology. So that's how I came to the US. I came to the US in 2000 as a student. I took another MBA in information systems here, and 9/11 happened. And then I have another story there where I was supposed to be in one of the towers doing an interview right at 8:30, and the guy who was scheduling everything called me back at 6 o'clock the previous evening and said, "Hey, you've been moved out to be there by 11." And I'm like, okay, I'll be there. So 9 o'clock, I was ready to get out. I was living in New Jersey. I was ready to go and catch the train. And a friend calls me up and say, he was the only guy who knew that I had this interview. And he calls me up and he says, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm just leaving right now to catch the train." And he's like, "There's no train to catch. Sit down and put the TV on." And that's what I did. And, and there you go. The towers were falling. The plane was in the towers. And I was sitting there numb, trying to figure out what just happened, Yeah, so that was eye-opening for me. I'm like, I could have been one of those guys in those towers and gone, and I'm not. So something told me that this is a second lease of life, and I was very thankful, and still continued to do my job search. I wasn't very sure I would get a job after that, because here you were. You come from a different country, and this just happened, and there's no telling what's going to happen. I ended up getting a job, by the way, by September that year. But all my experience that I just talked about did not mean anything. I had actually run a business. I had worked with a technology company back in India, helped them grow their exports, consulting exports in Middle East and all that. None of that mattered, because they said, "Hey, you come from a different part of the world. We don't know you. We don't know what you've done. You got to start from scratch." So I ended up taking a entry-level position and I grew through the ranks. And over the years, so what I've done for myself is, climb the ladder, pretty much. I started at a ground level job and moved all the way up to the exec team, and on the way, and ended up opening up a couple of businesses. Vocational training in the healthcare space. That's something that I've done, and I've always been a guy who, I think we all have this commodity of time. We all have time, probably at different levels. Some people end up dying sooner than others, but everybody has the time, and there's so much that can change with time. So you got to use and optimize your time in order to make the right changes for yourself. So when we talk about diehard optimism, that's where it comes from for me. I'm a firm believer that if you're optimistic, if you're positive, you can be down in the trenches, but you can climb your way back up. Like I said, my whole story started with, hey, I was out there tutoring a couple of kids for $3 a month. I came to the US with a suitcase and $200 in my pocket, actually $100 in my pocket. That's where I started. And now I'm at a totally different position, and it's a matter of how you leverage your time. So that's kind of my story in terms of what's happened, what's transpired over the last several years for me.
Wow. And the synchronicities, like you mentioned, how you were scheduled to go to an interview on the day of 9/11 and it got moved. And while you were about to go to that, it got, of course, inevitably canceled. Like, wow. I heard a story about that with somebody else who was scheduled to go to scheduled to go over there to the towers as well. But what happens was on that day they felt sick and called in sick, but they lost friends who did go to work that day. It was a scheduled contract job they had there, and he decided not to go there because he didn't feel well. And obviously, the 9/11 happened. So it's just crazy, like how those little things that we don't really take in, those little things that happen, and like just how much of an impact. It's sort of like a butterfly effect. And for me, I always like wonder, like, the what if. What if I did went there? What if I did do this or do that? And how, like, there's a different results for what could have happened. Wow, like
Right.
Man.
Yeah. How did you feel about the transition of technologies? I mean, that's like a big jump for one person, let alone an organization to handle. How did you take that on?
Wow. So that was something. So I'll give you a story here. And not a lot of people know this, but having grown up in India, and in the 90s, just nobody really owned a computer. Not a lot of people owned a computer at home. So if you wanted to do anything with your computers, you got to get into this kiosk and pay them and by the hour and use it. So you really don't get as much time to practice it. And I was somebody who had finished his MBA pre-technology, and I was somebody who was actually busy with working a job, but still wanted to learn what technology was all about. So it was definitely an uphill task. And when I came to the US, actually, to do my other MBA as well, I remember this very clearly. This was the first time I was getting like real free access to computers in the lab in the university, and I could sit at it as much as I wanted, right? So I sat down and typed my very first assignment, and it took me 4 hours to type a couple of pages in Word, right? And this was an assignment, so I was thinking about it, I was making notes, and I was typing. I did the whole thing, and 4 hours later, I was like, wow, it's done. And then I closed the application, and then I figured out, man, I didn't save it.
Oh my gosh!
Damn.
So I spent the next couple of hours redoing it all over again. So that was how my technology journey really began. I did actually dabble in C, C++ during those days, HTML, all of that. I never really liked C, C++. HTML was cool because, you got to see the websites and the products afterwards, but it still had to be learned. So when I actually came here and I took my MBA, all of my courses were in network designs and database management systems, systems analysis, Java. These are the things that I took, whether I liked it or not, because it had to be learned. And how I use it today, or what I do with all the, that was a foundation for me. I had to get my foundation right. And after today, we talk about, Bitcoins and blockchain and, AI, machine learning, cloud management, all of this stuff, right? Cloud services, DevOps and all that. And, that all came through as a part of the journey of, of learning. But that foundation was key. So there were dry topics that I didn't really enjoy. There were topics that I really loved, but it laid that foundation for me.
That's beautiful. You reminded me of when I was writing a paper, and I put it on a floppy disk. We're going to hand the floppy disk into the teacher, and there was this little pop-up that came up. It said, "Oh, would you like to reformat your disk?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to have my disk nice and formatted for when I handed it in." Little did I know that deleted everything on it, and similarly had to rewrite. But it's those. I mean, these are the learning experiences, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I tell a lot of people, right, that there are a lot of youngsters who reach out in terms of career advice and that kind of stuff. And I tell them, man, there's nothing to be ashamed of. We all start somewhere. I remember back in India when I was literally struggling with trying to understand what technology is about. I was in an interview for some technology sales job, and the interviewer asked me a question. He said, "Can you tell me," and I still laugh about it, but he said, "Can you give me the different flavors of database management systems?" And and he was probably pointing to Oracle and the other databases, SQL Server and the other ones out there, and I had no clue. I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? What's a flavor got to do with this? It's not coffee or tea. What do I say? We've all been there, and there's no shame in it. Today I laugh about it, but at that point in time, it was a very serious thing. Obviously that was the only question he asked. I didn't answer it, and the interview was over right there. But it kept with me. I kept thinking about it all the way back home, saying, what did I miss? And then later down the line, you figure out what you missed,
Right.
I didn't even. So you had sales positions as well that you interviewed for?
Oh yeah. So one of the things that I've done in my career is, like I said, I started with running businesses. Then I got into larger companies where I was helping them set up business units. And then throughout my career, when I started my career back in the US, I started on the technology end of things. I was a business analyst, hands-on, dabbling in technology, doing all that. I did that for a couple of years, and then I told myself, I really need to get to be client-facing. That's what I want to do. And I ended up getting into client relations management kind of a role. I was in front of the clients and all that. Spent a couple of years there, and then I told myself, okay, now I got to actually run operations. I got to be responsible for P&L. That's what I did next. I ran business units. I took over business units, grew them. I literally grew business units from scratch. And then I said, okay, now I got to, I got to get into implementations. I got to get into sales and business development. Then somewhere down the line, actually in 2011 or so, and this happened with me, where I was sitting in my office and I was thinking about it, and I was like, we all of us, when we look at the careers that we have, we all get a paycheck for it, and you take your paycheck at the end of the 2-week period, and then all that you've done for that week is over. It's zilch, it's gone. You're back to square one. You're back to scratch, right? And your entire years of experience is a single line or a paragraph on your resume. That's all you have to show for it. You take a musician, you take an actor, you take any actor or these guys, whatever they build in terms of their work is talked about for years, decades together. They have a whole series, a whole set of work to show. We don't. As an employee, you never do. So how do you differentiate yourself? So 2011, I started blogging. Okay, I said, I'm going to start blogging. I've got these thoughts on personal development. I've got these thoughts on healthcare, on benefits administration in the fields that I've been in. And, all of this is happenstance, right? I never dreamed in my entire life that I would end up in benefits or healthcare. It happened, you know. So that's how I got into it, and I started writing, and I started talking about it. And before you were getting published, and then you were getting invited to conferences to come and talk, and now you're a healthcare expert. If I look at my healthcare journey, when I started it, I started with trying to figure out what is an insurance plan, what's an HMO, what's a copay, what's co-insurance. That's where I started. But today, I've got companies basically coming back to me to seek my advice on what's the next big thing in the healthcare space, or what should we be buying in terms of Medicare or Medicaid or this or that. So that's the journey. We all start somewhere, and there's no shame in saying that you did not know anything when you started, and you've come a long way. So.
Wow.
Yeah. From 4 hours for that first paper to blogging consistently since 2011. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So now, if I really look back at what did I do, it goes as far back as I think 2011 to say, hey, this guy's been doing this, and that's how you build your repertoire, right? That's how you actually build your work. And that's a peek for somebody into my head to figure out how does this guy think, or what are his thoughts, where is he placed mentally, those kinds of things, and there's something to show for it. That's how I started it. And now I do that podcast and all that, and that's one of my ways of kind of dipping into my own experience and expertise and giving back to the world, because I've told myself when I started my podcast Plan B Success a year and a half ago, I told myself that I don't want to get into my senior years and look back and say, man, I should have done that. Regrets is one thing you never want in your life. And then the other thing is, I don't want to take away something and disappear knowing that the world's lasted. Whether they can use it or not, whether it's applicable to one person, 10 people, 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people, I don't care. I got to record it somewhere and put it out there for somebody to benefit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And perfect segue, because I was just about to ask you the next question about Plan B success, and just to hear more about that. Because from your hearing about your journey to where you're at right now, I'm sure there's a lot of opportunities to have a Plan B, or I want to know, because like for me, it's there's some people out there who say, oh, you're only supposed to have one plan and that's it, and you got to keep going at it and make it happen, type of thing. It works for some people, but I love this one because I'm intrigued. I never heard it in this way, like a Plan B success. So for myself, and I'm sure for our audience who would love to hear more about this, could you go more into that?
Absolutely. So I think, we live in a different world. You're right. There's a lot that's been said, and there's still a lot of people that believe that burn your bridges, have one plan and go at it, totally go at it. And only when you burn your bridges will you come out successful. There's no guarantee of that, right? What if you burn your bridges and you fail? There's no way to go and find a different route. So, I'm a firm believer that we all kind of, whether it's our jobs, careers, businesses, we all fall into happenstance. You go and study something in college, whether you go to college or not, or whatever you study, vocational training, whatever it is, you do it out of curiosity or out of a love for a certain subject. There's no guarantee in life, and I can bet on it that maybe 90+% of us, we've done one thing in studies, we end up in a totally different realm. Nobody plans it. We all get into our careers, businesses, jobs by happenstance. And then we spend the next couple of years there, we figure out what our strengths and weaknesses are, we figure out what our likes and dislikes are, all of that stuff. And unfortunately, a very small percentage of people make the pivot, make the shift into going after what they're truly passionate about. A majority of people just say, hey, I've spent the last 10 years doing this. I've got another 20 years in my career. Might as well just get done with it. And they just waltz through life doing what they truly don't enjoy. So it's work every day, right? So my attempt with Plan B success was, I got to tell people there's more than one plan. We live in a different world now. It's about gig economy. Any person can have more than one passion to pursue. Your profession could be one thing. Maybe you love writing books. Maybe you love taking those YouTube videos. Maybe you love something else. There's a lot of side hustles people talk about. And for a lot of people, the side hustles get stronger and stronger and can become their main line. So that's where Plan B comes from. That you're a person who's not tuned to do one thing and one thing only. A lot of people believe just pursue one thing. You're a person with multiple talents, multiple likes, multiple things that you can do. The degrees at which you do it could be varying. You might say, hey, this is what puts bread on the table. This is my profession. This is what I'm going to pursue. But I love singing. I'm going to do it on the side. It's a hobby. I love this. I'm going to do it, which is great. That's how a true individual who's holistic in nature forms themselves. But there's always a plan B, and you got to figure out where your plan B lies. If you want to look back at the last 10 years of your life and say, you know what, I really had a great time in those last 10 years, then it's in your hands. Or you can look back and say, those were the worst 10 years of my life. I made a paycheck, I took care of my family, but man, did I suffer getting through those. That's the difference. So this whole burning bridges thing is in the past. This whole thing about, have one plan and go after it. You should do that with any plan. You should go after anything with all the zeal you've got. Otherwise, it's not worth spending your time. You're just wasting it. And then you can take it a certain distance. And if your interests need to switch at that point, you should be welcome to do it. So that's what Plan B success is all about. And then, the other thing that I focus on is, how I got into podcasting is there were a lot of these 20-somethings who were starting podcasts and interviewing their next celebrity that they could find. And I'm like, I got some time between different jobs, and I started figuring out what podcasting was all about. And then I said, man, this is great stuff. I've got experience, I've got my expertise, there's stuff that I can share, and I can make it to be more than interviews. And that's how I started it. I do 3 episodes a week. There's always an interview on Mondays, and Wednesdays and Fridays, I take a topic, solo topics, and then I talk about it. And what I preach to people who are in mid-careers, right? I kind of preach to them that you can still make a shift if you want to. This whole thing that I talked about, how you can build a history for who you are and make yourself unique, not just another employee with a paycheck, that's in your hands. And a part of the work that I do with Plan B Success is to motivate people to go and pursue their passions.
I love that. And that's definitely an illusion that a lot of people have, and it's still, I guess, is like the old construct of thinking, meaning like they feel like their career, that's all that they can do right now, and you're supposed to work that for whatever odd amount of years, and then you retire, and then you can enjoy life. But in the meantime, you gotta go through something that you may not even like. And
right,
there's and like the way you mentioned, there's just an opportunity for all of us. Like, if you really pursue what you're passionate about and go at it, you can be able to achieve it. You can be able to achieve whatever goals. And I was just talking to somebody about this, how this kid on YouTube had a passion for toys. So what the little kid, and he's only 8 years old, what the kid did was did YouTube videos just explaining these toys passionately, like what he loved about them, what he didn't like about them, had no intention besides like, this is my passion and I'm just going to do it, what I want to do and get it out there. And what happened? He made like $26 million by just doing his passions. And that just shows in this day and age, and like you mentioned before, technology, how just expansive the technology is now compared to before. And there's so much ample opportunities for us to pursue our passion and get our passion out there. And there's people out there who are actually waiting for us to do it. And I'm sure there's people listening right now who do have a passion and they do potentially want to pursue it, but they have that fear of like, oh I can't do it because I have to find a way of making money or whatever it is. So for those type of people, because I know somebody's listening and would have that question for you, So let's say somebody has a passion and they would like to pursue the passion, but they feel that this 9 to 5 job that they don't like, they have to do this as a way of making money. So for that type of person, what would you suggest for them to really be able to like step more into their passion and do things that more passionate about compared to doing stuff that they dread doing every day?
Sure. So a lot of people, I've seen people on different programs and courses, and then this whole rah thing happens, and then the next thing you know, they're resigning their job and saying, "Boom, I'm jumping in, I'm going to do this all out." That's a bad idea. You know, you don't want to, get out of what's working for you to for today in pursuit of something in the future that you believe is going to make you successful. That's a bad idea. I'm not going to advise anybody to drop whatever they're doing or drop their jobs and then go and put time into the other thing. You make the time. If that's what you want to do, whatever your passion is, make the time to dabble there so that you can start getting a feel for it. It takes confidence to go to that next level, and it takes confidence to apply it and be able to whatever. Let's say you want to be a coach, right? You gotta do it for yourself first before you're able to teach it to others. You know, and unfortunately or fortunately, there's everybody who wants to teach the other guy how to make money. That's the world we live in today. But it's not just about that. People talk about niche. People talk about avatars. People talk about and then the next thing everybody's trying to teach the other guy how to make $10,000 a month, how to make 100,000 a month. There's a lot of people out there like that, and you need to know where you want to invest your time. First thing is get that clarity in your head. Get clarity in your head as to who are you truly, and everything, the bad, the good, the ugly, everything. Who are you truly in your own mind? Get some personal clarity. And after you have that personal clarity, then ask yourself the question, what do I really enjoy? And if the answer is, like I've actually talked to people who have actually graduated after college and all that, and then they come back and say, I don't want to do a job. I just love writing. I just want to keep writing. I don't want to do a job. I still tell them, you've got a degree. You got to go back and find a job, because you got to put food on the table. You got to have a roof on your head. That's where it's going to come from. You love writing? Start with a blog. Write for yourself. Put it out there. Let's see what people think about it. Tweak the way you write. And then over time, start building your expertise, as well as when you put it, it's so easy to put it out there in the world today, in the world of social media. Then you'll have a following that will follow you. People will come back, and there's always somebody in the 7+ billion people out there in the world. Can't you find a handful of people who like what you do? It's very possible. And once you start finding them, now you get to that next level. Okay, I've got personal clarity. I know what I want to do. Once you know what you really want to do, now it's about the nuts and bolts of it. There's a creative side of all that we do. There's a technical side of it, the infrastructure, the technology that I use, how I integrate it, all that. Not everybody loves it, right? There are people who just love the technology side of it. There are people who just love the creative side of it. Depending on whoever you are, there are things that you need to learn on the other side, just so that you're comfortable with it. But at the same time, you might want to find help. You could trade, you could barter, you could tell somebody, hey, I'll write an article for you. You're great at website design. I need you to design my website for me. You know what? For the next month, I'll write this content for your blogs. Stuff like that. You don't have to even pay. And once you do that, now you start forming a structure around what you really want to do. And it takes time. It could be 3 months, it could be a year, depending on who you are, what your personality is, and all that. And now you're at a point where you're very clear about what you want to do. You're doing it. You have some small following. Doesn't matter if it's 10 followers, 15, 20, 100, doesn't matter. And then you're building the systems. And once you have that, now you look at, how do I tap into my tribe in order to give them the best value I can? And at that point, you look at, what do I need to charge for it? Now you got to bring it mainstream. And people will be more than happy to pay you if they're getting value for it. And there's a lot of coaches out there, a lot of people who will talk about the stars and the sun and the moon and all that, and then leave you on the high and on your own. You don't want to go with somebody like that. You got to go with somebody who can hold your hand and walk you through your journey and then let you go so that you take it forward. So that's my piece of advice.
Woo, woo, woo. Oh man, that was powerful. So many nuggets that you just dropped into what you just said. A couple of ones that stick out for me right now is the one of doing the stuff that you like to do, and then like the things that you don't like to do. There's two options. One, you can suck it up and figure out how to do those things, or two, start to co-create with other people who are passionate about those things you don't like. And I love the second one, because for me, and I said it to Kai before, I said, what I like to do for my own brand, my own businesses, I want to do the stuff I'm passionate about. And the stuff I'm not passionate about, I would love to find somebody who's passionate about those things, because collectively, just that energy of all of us being passionate is going to build something so amazing, compared to me feeling like I need to do something and go into that with that energy, because it's a different type of energy and output and input for myself that happens when I'm doing it. I feel like I have to do it, compared to I choose to do that thing. It's so powerful. And this goes back to what you say, burning bridges and stuff. You never know who can be on the opposite side of the bridge that can help you, or even know somebody that can help you to get to where you're at. And I love also what you mentioned of building the tribe and presenting the value first. There's a lot of people out there who try to offer the solution and like pay me type of thing first, and not having credibility out there. You may be the greatest coach or the greatest whatever you are out there, but if you don't have are able to showcase that value first to people, they're not going to pay you. They're like, who are you?
Right.
How's it going to work?
And the thing is, you got to understand that to find a new follower is a bigger task than retaining the one that you've already got. And the way you retain them is through value. If I can teach somebody how to do something and then motivate the hell out of them and leave them on a cloud and let them fleet by and take the money and say, okay, I'm done. That's one way of doing it. There are a lot of people who do that. But the thing is, if I can make sure they get on that cloud, but I say, hey, I'm here, I'm tethered to your cloud, and I will help you take those first steps, maybe until you find your first customer, for instance. And after that, you're on your own. Man, you've got a customer for life now. That person who you have helped is there for life. And tomorrow you come up with something else. Okay, how about scaling your business to the next level? I have a whole program on it. I want to help you out, man. Guess who's signing up? That's what happens.
Yeah. I call it water in the pot and water in the plant. Sure, because like a beautiful plant, which is those people, build those relationships. And like myself, I forgot to even mention I have years of sales as well. So that's why I was asking you about sales. But for me, I had two different avenues in which I was that short salesperson. Like, okay, boom, that's it. Have a nice day, whatever. But then also, and I call it for myself, I call it conscious selling, in which I'm really just being a service for this person and being present with them, and even having a conversation with them. And I'm not even trying to sell something. I'm looking how I can help this person, or if I find something throughout my day, oh, this person could value for, just giving it to that person. So that way, when I do have something like you mentioned, I have this upcoming thing happening, they are more than excited. And even they may know somebody who's excited for it as well. Like, oh yeah, my friend's looking for this. So it's so much value of building that rapport, and also just realizing how important each relationship is, because you never know what that can expand to by just really being present and helping that person along the way, instead of like you said, to walk up to the cloud and like, okay, have a nice day.
Right. And I think it's important for people to understand that you don't have to wait for somebody's permission to start anything. A lot of people do that. A lot of people are waiting for somebody else to recognize them. I'm sure there's a lot of diamonds in the rough out there, but don't wait for permission. If you believe you have the skill set, time you get started. And don't be overawed by somebody who's done it for the last 20, 30 years and has this huge following, and then you're comparing yourself with them and saying, oh my god, this guy has a huge following, where do I fall? No, everybody started with that first thing that they did. Everybody started with that first follower. You're starting on your journey now, and if you're going to compare yourself with where you were yesterday and where you're today. And if there's a difference, then you're on the right track. If you've taken 2 steps back, then it's time to relook at what you're doing.
Yeah. Huh. Huh. Man. Yeah. I was just about to say the comparison thing too. For myself, I was doing that when I started my journey, like comparing to other people in the field who are more successful. And there's a lot of potential judgment that you feel. And you feel like you're not enough. You're not where you supposed to be. You're supposed to be somewhere else than where you are. And like now what I do is I do comparison out of a curious mind of just the people who are very highly successful in my field,
Mm-hmm.
to see how they're doing it, to see what they're doing, how they're engaging with people. Like, and also I like to take a step back with these people to go all the way back to like their very first information out there. And you get to see like, wait a second, like this person is just like me, how I was. But the thing about it was they are consistent. They kept going at it,
Right.
and going, offering value, being of service. And then out of nowhere, next you know, boom, all it takes is one moment and you're there.
Right. Absolutely. So it's a lot of patience. It's a lot of perseverance. Nothing comes without that, and people need to recognize that. We live in a instant gratification kind of a world. I put a post out there. I need 100 likes and I need 100 comments. That's not what's going to happen with a lot of the good stuff that needs to happen to you. You need to be consistent. You need to be patient. You need to be on the job, irrespective of how it's going. If you can bring that to the table, things will happen for you. Success has no way of escaping you.
And that was another thing. It was like I was sharing my own journey. When I was doing posts before, I used to be so attached to that. Like, oh my God, I want to get likes, I want to get retweets or reshares, I want comments, I want to engage. And I was feeling discouraged when I was getting content out there and people weren't responding. And I'm in the mindset now, like if I impact one person, that's enough now. And also, what is my intention when I'm putting it out there? I'm just putting it out there not only to serve others, but to serve myself. And
yeah, I ended up meeting somebody. I think it was a couple of months ago, and this guy, I knew him from India, and apparently I knew him when he was a kid. And he recognized me. He walks over to me. He talks about how I gave him a small puppy. He was a neighbor apparently, and how I gave him a small puppy when he was young, and when I saw him crying for one with his dad. And I kind of tried to recollect, when did I do that? And then, after spending some time recollecting, I figured out, I had a friend who had some, they were trying to get rid of some puppies that they had. And, I had this guy, and all I did was get it from them and give it to these guys. And this guy stops me in the middle of the street and he talks about this stuff. And I'm like, wow, what an impact that puppy had on this guy, that he still remembers it. And I had to think at least 5 minutes before I figured out, when did this happen? So, small things like that. But that was great. That was life-changing for that guy when he was a kid, that he still remembers it. He's a middle-aged guy now. He still remembers it, now. So you never know, and that made my day that day. I'm like, wow, that's great.
It's that one little moment.
Yeah.
Selfless service makes such an impact on that person. Wow.
I think the equation is very simple, right? Look at how you can impact others' lives, how you can bring positive change to theirs, and you don't even have to do anything for yourself. Yours will change automatically, and many-fold too.
It's amazing. What would you say to people who are trying to discern if their passion has any value?
I think they're starting off on the wrong foot there, not the right foot, the wrong foot there, because I think every passion has value. where we live. There are, I'll tell you something. There are YouTube videos out there with nothing else but a piece of paper flying in the air and 3 hours of recording. Piece of paper flying in the air. And there are people that watch it, right? So you cannot say that there's no value for anything we do. I think it's a matter of finding value or finding the right tribe that finds value in that. So everything that a person wants to do, has a passion about, whether it's scribbling, whether it's writing something, whether it's drawing, whether it's talking into the microphone, whether it's making faces. TikTok is there for that, right? Making faces. So I think everything has some value to somebody. And there's 7+ billion people out there. And to find that all you need is a small sliver of people who have or who share the same passion as you, and you got to make an impact. That's what it is. And if you believe in that, I think don't start with the idea. Don't try to rationalize your passion saying, does this have value? Is this going to make me money? Start from the point of, I like doing this. I feel creative doing this. I want to be able to do this, and do it. And then, even as you build your tribe, be yourself. How many people talk about failures? We have a lot of people who talk about successes. We have a lot of people who want to go and follow that celebrity out there because they are very successful. Anybody can do that. But how about going and learning from somebody's failures? How about finding out how you fell and stood up again? If you look for that, there's a lot of people out there, but all are behind the curtains. But that's where the true lessons are. And if you learn those lessons, if you take them to heart, then you will come out much more successful than others. And I think that's what people need to understand. Do something because you're passionate about it. Do something because you feel for it from your heart. Don't start from the idea of, okay, is this going to make money or not? Because if you're thinking like that, that's not a passion at all. You're trying to cultivate something. That's not your passion.
I love how you said people's failures as opposed to a person being a failure. There's a lot of people out there who just identify with the word failure instead of recognizing it as some kind of action, that has happened. So
and one thing, and I'm a strong believer that the best coaches, you take any of the star athletes, right? When you look at who their coaches were, it's never the previous champion. It's always somebody who got almost to that championship, but for some reason or the other didn't make it. You take any star athlete out there or any star performer, their coach is not the previous champion. It is somebody who tried hard enough, who made it all the way up, but for some reason or the other did not make it big. I think the best coaches are those ones who tried their best, because you know what? They are the ones who know all the things not to do in order to get to be a champion, right? If you want to be a champion, what are the things you should not do? Somebody who's successful will never know that, because you know what? They're successful. They may know some, not all of it, but those are the people that will make the best coaches.
Wow, that's a great point.
And that's what you need to seek in a coach or a mentor.
Mm. And do you have a coach or a mentor?
So I don't have a specific coach or a mentor. My entire life, a lot of people have asked me this question. I've been a guy more or less who self-learned my way. I have a lot of passive mentors. I don't have active mentors, but there are people that I have liked their work and I follow. For instance, Zig Ziglar, the sales guru. I love his work. I love his sing-song way of saying things. I love his stories. And every time I listen to something or every time I read a book, there's a new lesson I take away from it. So I don't have coaches that I'm working with on an active basis, but I spend a lot of time in books or in listening to stuff from other people, and not just Zig Ziglar for that matter. There are others who have done well. Like, there's podcasters who've done really well for themselves. There's a guy by name John Lee Dumas, who's very well known, Entrepreneurs on Fire. I think he's a very transparent guy. You go into his website or you check out, and he does immense value in what he provides in his podcast as well as his website. He shares his financials with you. Yeah. So everything that he says is very practical and of value. And the stuff I listen to him, I could turn on his episode now, and there's something I'll always have to take away. So there are people like that I value a lot. Most of them in the past, a few current ones, but that's kind of my style of getting mentored.
Very cool.
Yeah. And if you're present at every moment, everybody can be a mentor in every moment.
Right.
Sweet. Yeah. So are you a firm believer in the 5 people that we're around are essentially mirroring what it is that we are becoming?
Yeah, I think we live in a different world today, right? So it's not just about people. What do you surround yourself with? What do you listen to? What do you read? Who are you interacting with? If we ask anybody who are the 5 people that you're associating with, I think in this pandemic time and in these remote times, a lot of people will tell you that it's their immediate family, and some of them will like it, some of them will not. But in these days, I think it's who do you listen to? Who do you talk to? Who do you interact with? Like, I have a podcast. There's always new guests coming in on the podcast, and there's always something to learn from these guys. But it kind of keeps you mentally attuned to what you truly and really want to do. So that's the. But yes, where does your mind sit on any given day is generally around the stuff that you spend the most time with.
Wow, you just blew my mind there. With where your mind sits is your mindset, yes?
Right, absolutely.
That's pretty profound. Amazing. Would you like to tell everyone, I mean, it's crazy how fast we get to the top of the hour, but what are the capacities to which, a person can work with you and where they can find you, and your podcast?
Sure. So Plan B Success is my podcast. It's all out on all the major listening platforms out there. The website is planb.live. So planb.live is the website for the podcast. And then my personal website is Rajiv Mudumba, RAJEEVMUDUMBA.com. And I obviously I'm out there. I'm out on all the social media channels. I'm out on Facebook, so people can get in touch with me in any way they want. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I'm actually in the process of putting together a course. I call it the Plan B Success Blueprint, the Plan B Success Reveal program, basically taking people through the journey of personal clarity. How do you know who you truly are? And reintroducing you to yourself. And once we're done with that, then making sure that you take stock of your strengths and weaknesses, and then pick what you really want to do. And then the third part of it is the whole tactical aspect of it. How do we go about helping you build the infrastructure, the technologies, the integrations, etc., in order to, get you to put your footprint out in the world. So that's a program I'm in the process of creating right now, and I expect to launch it in the next 3 months. So that's something else that I've been working on.
Beautiful. Thank you. And if there was one takeaway for anyone who is listening, to this episode and all of the wealth of information that you've shared, what would that one takeaway be?
I think everybody is a star in their own right. Recognize that first. Don't wait on permission in order to find what your strengths are, and what you can be good at, whatever your aspiration, just look deep inside yourself and ask yourself the question, what's my aspiration? What do I really want to be when I grow up? You might be a grown up, ask yourself the same question. And whatever that is, set on that journey right away. Don't wait on anybody's permission. Get on that journey, because until you take action, until you take the next step, you don't know what's in store for you. You can think all day, you can brood all day, you wouldn't have moved an inch. Take action now.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much. This time was so super valuable, and I'm feeling inspired in this moment to get to work.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you everyone who is listening, whether you're listening with us live or catching the replay. we just have two words for you, and that is
Stay